Let's all try to improve our corner game, because that's where most fighting games are won and lost. What up, everybody? So quick disclaimer before I start the video, my voice is horrible right now. If you have kids, I don't even have to explain it, but if you don't have kids, just know kids are very gross. They cough in your face, they rub snot all over your hands, and 90% of the time you're with them, you're sick. So bear with me. I'm going to try to get through this video as best as I can, but we got this. So in basically every single fighting game, matches are won in the corner, whether you're an offense or defense. And guess what? Street Fighter 6 is absolutely no different. So in this video, I'm going to aim to show you what to look out for, whether you're in the corner as an offensive player or a defensive player. But the main goal is to make you better in the corner in either situation. As always, if you want to skip, go through the timestamps. Ain't no one going to judge. So do what works best for you. And the main reason the corner is so important in every fighting game is fighting games boil down to one thing mostly: space control. How can you control the most space and give your opponent less space to work with? So when they're in the corner, your opponent has less space, and when you have them in the corner, you have a lot more space to work with. So here are 5 offensive tips and 5 defensive tips to help you in the corner. Alright, so the introduction to the offense side. When your opponent's in the corner, this is when you have to focus, because such a big part of the game comes down to here. You don't want to be in a situation where you let your foot off the gas and then they're out the corner like that. So let's go through the 5 tips to improve your corner game. Alright, so if you want to improve your corner game, or just something that you're just brand new to, the first thing I recommend is try not to play so close to people, because oftentimes people are just going to jump right out of the corner. Try to stand at a distance where you know if your opponent jumps, they're still not going to be able to jump over you. So I know from this distance, if I have Ryu try to jump, he's never going to cross me up, because I'm at the distance where his jump is not going to cover it. And I'm going to tell you why this is very important. Alright, the first reason that this distance is important is even if your opponent's going to get the jump off, which is the most popular option, they're still not able to jump over you, and you're still at a big space advantage. You still have 90% of the stage to work with, and they only have 10%. The other reason it's important is that it gives you a lot more time to react to the situation. Because Ryu's jumping from far away, you can get comfortable with things like practicing your dragon punches, and I know if those are hard, there are other options like a crouch fierce, for example, will still be a good option here. Even things like a quick air-to-air, it's another option. A neutral jump air-to-air is an option. The point is, the further away that they are, the more time you're going to have to react, and then eventually you're going to be able to pull this space closer and closer and then lock your opponent out. But start at a distance where you're comfortable, and then slowly move forward and work on your anti-airs and lockdown pressure. And then the other reason this distance is important is because it's a very good space to let you gain information on your opponent. So there are lots of things your opponent's going to want to do in the corner because they're uncomfortable. So oftentimes you'll see things like neutral jumps, perfect parries. They might want to parry a fireball. They might get hoppy and start jumping, or they might just turtle and stand back. But the longer you observe them in the corner, you're going to start noticing, hey, they parry 5 times around, or they try jumping out of the corner 5 times around. So I know they're more keen on wanting to use those options. That's only possible by taking your time and trying to observe what they're doing. And in tip 3, I'm going to show you how to counter these options. But the key here is we need information first. So the 5 main offensive tools, I'm going to go through all of them, are how to use your normals, fireballs, drive impact, throw loops, and safe jumps. Alright, so we've all been in this position in neutral. Your opponent will whiff a button, move back, and then get you in a spacing trap. Something like that. And this is only possible because your opponent has space to move back. But the beauty part is, when they're in the corner, they no longer have this walking back space. Only I do. So you have to get comfortable standing in the ranges where you know that their normals are not going to be as effective, and then you're going to have counterplay to it. If they're a character that you hate, honestly, just go into training mode and practice with them as well. But just know that spacing traps are much harder for your opponents to do when they have their back against the wall. So you have to find the right distance for yourself. Alright, so if you're a player that's still getting comfortable with the corner game, I recommend focusing on 2 types of normals. The first normal is like an annoying poke. It could be a crouch medium punch, it could be a crouch low. The reason this is good is that you don't have to move back and forward to still be able to, counterpoke Marisa in situations like this or other characters. And then the other type of normal to focus on is some characters have, heavy punches or fierce kicks that send them very far. And then this will let you, be able to walk backwards and then still be able to send yourself forward to do a counter poke. But I would focus on 2 types of normals first, and then eventually slowly start building in other normals. When you're comfortable, with stationary normals or normals that move you very forward, start implementing the normals that slightly move you forward. So for example, Terry's stand medium punch moves him forward, but not to the same distance as his standing fierce. And the reason this is important is now you can start implementing traps like this. I know from this distance, Terry's crouch medium kick is not going to work, but because the stand medium kick moves me slightly forward, I can counter it like that. And once you can counter it with this, you're going to say, hey, I can drive rush after and do something. I can just cancel it into, a special move like that. But you now have 3 options you're comfortable with. And then I promise once you're more comfortable, you will get so much better at, just knowing what's going to hit you in the corner depending on your opponent. You can just go in and out of traffic, start using different normals like crouch medium punches into big punishes like this. And all of this is only possible because you took the time to learn what normals work. And then once you slowly got better, you're able to implement your entire normal arsenal. But remember, start off slowly, only work on 2 to 3 normals, and then take it from there. The next thing to remember is fireballs are a great tool when opponents in the corner, because again, they're always going to garner a reaction. They're either going to block, parry, try to jump over it, but they're not going to want to get hit. And I made it as a post in another video, but remember, the closer you are, the more negative your fireballs are. So you want to find that sweet spot where, if you're to hit them with a fireball, it's very plus. So if you keep moving back, it went from plus 10 to plus 21. And why this is important is, again, it's an annoying pressure tool and it will let you do things like drive rush after to continue your offense. But let's just say your opponent gets hoppy and they want to jump out of the corner. Because you're at this distance, you can throw another fireball and still get up the ante-air, keeping them in the corner. So slow fireballs are great tools for corner lockdown. The fast fireballs are still good because they're hard to react to at this distance. But if you really want to lock them down, master when to do the slow one, and know that if they're trying to pursue you, then you can do the fast fireball. Up next, we have drive impact, and let's be real, we've probably been hit by this 10,000 times each. But if it makes you feel better, so are the pros, and that's why I bring it up. If you watch high-level tournaments, people are still getting hit by drive impact like crazy. And the reason for that is it just adds to the mental stack. People are worried you're going to try to grab them, get them in weird poke ranges, and then all of a sudden a drive impact comes out. So the one thing I'll say, if you're going to try to drive impact a lot, just don't make it predictable and use it as a crutch like every single option. You're going to go for it. The best way to use a drive impact is to try to make it as less telegraphed as possible. So a lot of times, people will hide it behind normals like that, or they'll do like a very meaty normal into it, just to change up some of the visual cues. People even drive rush forward and do it. They just want to mess your timing and rhythm up as much as possible. Even target combos can hide them and you can get them through. But the main thing here is to just not rely on them and use them as a crutch, because obviously your opponent will have an easy way to counter it, but it's still something that you need to keep in your arsenal to keep your opponent honest. Alright, I hate myself for having to say this, but if your character has a throw loop, you have to use it. And I know we all hate throw loops, you're preaching to the choir, but it's a part of the game, so you have to use them. Obviously, this is a corner video, so one thing the throw loop does is it keeps you in the corner, and that's good. The other reason it's good is that it's an excellent resource tool. So if you look at the bottom left of the screen, I have 0 bars with Ed. One throw gives me 20% of my bar, and it does 1200 damage. So if I'm to do this 5 times, I will get a super bar out of this, and I would have dealt 6,000 damage, which is like a critical art level combo. Like, that's a ton of damage, plus you're building a super out of it. So you're going to have to practice your throw loops. Throws also give you more meter than things like a DP. Even the heavy punch DP doesn't give as much as a throw, as you can see over here. Or even things like your blitzes and whatnot. Like your special moves are not going to build as much meter. So to practice throw loops, you're going to want to set the opponent to, you know, wake up reversal of a crouch light. And then some characters will have auto time throw loops like Ed, where he just dashes forward and then presses grab on wake up. And let's just say your opponent lets you get 2 to 3 of these off. You just did 3600 damage and still built up 60% of a super bar. That's incredible. And I know you're going to see it a lot more, but you have to use it. And of course, if your character has access to a shimmy, that's another great way to, you know, bait throws and whatnot and still keep corner pressure. And of course, it wouldn't be Street Fighter 6 without another extremely powerful tool, that's Drive Rush. So in this game, Drive Rush makes your normals much better, which we all know. But this is very important in the corner because it helps you set up a lot of your frame traps. So in this game, you know, especially Terry, all of his normals are minus, which means he's not going to have any frame advantage to set up, you know, consistent frame traps. So for example, if I set Jamie to crouch medium punch, if on block, if I always mash my crouch medium punch, it's not going to come out before his, because this frame trap will never work. The math will never work. Even if I do a light into medium, it won't work. Now, if I do a medium into a light, this should be able to beat his, you know, option, and I create a frame trap. The important thing to remember here is you have to add to the mental stack and sometimes throw in a Drive Rush normal, because now my medium punch will always hit. And if it doesn't hit, it'll trade and I'll still be in a better spot right now. So you have to mix up your normal frame traps with Drive Rush frame traps because it's going to add to your opponent's mental stack. The other reason is this is not very costly at all. One Drive Rush only takes 1 bar. So 1 bar to set up a very annoying pressure situation is worth it. And a lot of combos, you know, they go into, you know, very extended combos like this, and you slowly start building drive bar back. You know, if you go into level 3, you'll build even more. So the point is, use all the tools available to you, but remember, Drive Rush normals are cheap. Just try not to get into the habit of canceling normals into them, because that's when they go into like 3 bars worth of resources, and then they're not as optimal. And then the final, you know, offensive tool you have to know are how to use safe jumps. So in this game, the magic number is plus 42. You see when your opponent gets up at the bottom, it says plus 42. As long as you see that on wake up, it means you have a safe jump against 99.9% of the cast. There are characters like Honda or Lily with Windstock that can counter that, but I can go into how to beat those in different videos. Most of the characters, you're going to just be able to blow up, you know, any reversal that they have. So Chun-Li, for example, let's just set her to do her wake up OD uppercut. It's never going to get me here because I know I did a safe jump. So the reason this is important is that it lets you carry on pressure, add to your opponent's mental stack, and if you do hit the combo, you're going to get them with a lot of damage, or if they have to block it all, they're going to lose a lot of drive resources. If they perfect parry it, you know, you're still safe, so you can recover in time, you can grab them back, you can block. And the other reason is, it lets you add to your offensive as well. So, for example, you'll see a lot of times where people know they have a safe jump, they'll land and then do another jump just to get people to try to bait a throw. Or what they'll do is land and then go into a low combo to make them seem like they're going to get hit high, but then you go into a low starter like that. So knowing safe jumps are important because they let you go into these different routes that are annoying, but they add to your opponent's mental stack, which is a big part of the corner game. So earlier in the video I said, you know, your opponent's going to have different reactions to what you do in the corner. Some will want a neutral jump, some will try to perfect parry a fireball so they don't have to deal with it. Others will just try to jump out right away, and some will just, you know, hold crouch back and just take on the onslaught. Once you're playing a set for a long time, you might notice, hey, this person did like 20 neutral jumps, and you're going to say, hey, maybe I can just dash forward and do a DP. Or in a situation where I know they've just been trying to perfect parry my fireballs, I'm going to bait them and go in for something like a grab or a meaty, you know, attack situation after. You can practice your anti-airs, or if they're just crouching, you know, keep them honest with some overheads. You're the one that's in an advantageous spot in the corner. You just have to slowly take your time and then work on the best decision for, you know, the situation at hand. And then the last thing you have to watch out for is just your opponent's resources. So if they have OD bar, you know they can do a wake up reversal. If they have supers, they can hit you with some invincible supers. But the point is, that doesn't mean that you should be completely deterred. Let's just say Jamie over here has 1 bar, you can see on the top right of the screen. I'm still going to pressure him on wake up because if he gets me, he's going to go into burnout. And there are going to be tons of opportunities or situations, where I'm going to take the burnout of my opponent over, further continuing my pressure. This is a calculated risk, but I'm okay with it. And you're going to get more comfortable knowing, your burnout pressure and what you can do. And that leads into tip number 4. The other type of option that you have to be able to check is a lot of times if you go for another grab or a throw loop, your opponent's going to neutral jump. Oftentimes, and I see this a lot, I'm guilty of it once in a while too, I'll try to perfect parry the landing, but that is not the best option at all because 1, they could just do an empty jump and grab me and then I'm eating a ton of damage and I'm in the corner. So the best option to do is practice getting your anti-airs out. So if you have, a Dragon Punch anti-air, do the light punch version. This will work all the time. You just have to practice getting into the rhythm. But if you're not comfortable with Dragon Punches, most characters will have a normal that'll be able to cover this range. So like a Crouch Fierce will still work great. And again, if you're not comfortable, you can still do something like an air to air, but you have to be able to cover these options because they keep your opponent locked down in the corner. Tip number 4 is what to do when your opponent's burnt out in the corner. This is hands down the worst position in the entire game to be in. When you're burnt out in the corner, you have no defensive options outside of supers. In most cases, like you don't have OD resources. And every single normal and special your opponent hits you with is +4 more advantageous. So Terry's crack shoots, for example, they're usually all negative. But when someone's burnt out, as you can see, they're all positive. So the first thing you have to do is find out the best normals and specials your character has when the opponent's burnt out. Once you learn that, you can start hitting them with annoying setups like this, which are all safe on block, and if your opponent's to mash out, they're going to get hit. And they really have to take risky options like supers or DPs, which you can bait out and block. But these are just other forms of frame traps that are not only, very annoying, but they're also doing chip damage. So the one thing you're going to notice when a player's burnt out, doesn't matter how, good or new they are, they're going to be erratic. They're going to try to jump, and the main reason is they don't want to get hit by that drive impact. So a lot of times you'll see things like, you're going to try to panic and get them with a drive impact. They're going to jump out of it, and they're not going to get hit. They're going to throw you back, and then you lost your opportunity. In these situations, I recommend 2 things. And then that sets up the next very important thing is finding out checkmate situations. So checkmate situations are essentially anything that will make it impossible for your opponent to not get, stunned. So if you have Jamie with no supers, basically he's at your mercy. But you need to know the checkmate situation. If I rush and do like a crouch medium punch into a drive rush, Jamie grabbed me. That means it wasn't a true checkmate situation. I have to make that gap tighter. So with your character, you have to find a situation where the gap is so precise that if Jamie's set to, a crouch or a grab, or any character set to a grab, they're not able to grab me like that. I know with Terry's fierce punch into a drive impact, if the opponent doesn't have, like an armor move or something like that, they're going to get hit whether it's the first hit or the second, and it doesn't matter if they try to grab, they're going to get taken out. If it's a situation where they try to neutral jump in this situation, you're going to see that it's still going to knock them back. So that covers both options. So you have to find out a checkmate option when your opponent has 0 bars. The first is to not rush to hit them with a drive impact. Look how much bar Jamie has to recover before he gets his, drive bar back. So you can dash forward, and I have Jamie set to jump, and I'm not going to do the drive impact. I'm just going to hit him with a meaty button to catch his jump to not let him, escape. And the reason this is important is once they start jumping or they try to escape, they won't be holding back. And that means I can, string this along just a bit longer just to get some more damage, build some more chip damage, if that's the route that I want to go. But there are options, and it lets them think that, that drive impact can come at any time. But in the meantime, I'm still eating a lot of damage and a lot of chip damage. So I better do something, you quick. And then on the flip side, you have to come up with a checkmate situation for when your opponent does have bar. So in this example, I know Jamie's super comes out in 10 frames or something like that. What's important to know here is this is going to beat a ton of my options. If I try to go in with a medium punch, it's going to beat me. If I go back to the fierce punch version that worked on his grabs, that's going to get me. It doesn't matter if I wait till the second hit. So you have to figure out what's the best way to add more frames. And as we talked about the other parts of the video, the drive rush. So I know on Jamie's wake up, if I drive rush and hit him twice with the fierce punch, that super is not going to have enough time to come out because he's still in block stun. And it doesn't knock him against the wall, but if you look at the top left of the screen, Jamie still takes a little bit of health. And that might be just the amount of health you needed to kill an opponent. So you have to know proper checkmates when they have level 3s and level 1s available. So the final thing you have to remember about your opponent when they're burnt out in the corner is that, you can chip them out of the level 3 if they have anywhere from 13 to 15% health, depending on who they are. So that's around 1300 to 1500 damage. So Terry, if he's up close, his level 3 will do around 1100 damage, which is not that bad. It's almost as much as a throw. So you have to ask yourself, how can I add just a little bit extra damage to go for the kill? So if I add Jamie to, do a block reversal, again, if I go the old standard route, he's going to be able to get that. But if I tell myself, hey, I'm going to do another tight link like a fierce punch into a burning knuckle into a level 3, that extra 300 damage now made the whole attack do over 1400 and it got the kill. So that's a pure checkmate in that situation. There's nothing Jamie could do to avoid it. He's eating all of that chip. So there are options, when your opponent has level 3s and they have low health, that you can still go for the kill. And then the final tip for the offense section is sometimes you just have to take the corner carry over damage. And if you've ever seen the movie, 40-year-old virgin, they had that one famous line where the guy kept saying, you gotta stop putting max damage on a pedestal. And that's exactly the case in a lot of fighting game situations. So if you can actually go for the kill, a combo that does more damage is better, obviously. But if there's a situation where you can sacrifice the damage to push your opponent in the corner more and still have extra pressure, that might be a better option as well. Because as we learned in this video, when they're in the corner, that's when you're at the big advantage. So this is what I mean when I say you have to prioritize the corner. So let's just say we take our buddy Ken here, he misses an ODDP. Oftentimes we're just going to hit him with a combo to send him further away and go along. And yeah, that is okay, but is that always the best situation? Maybe it's better to, do a back throw and put him in the corner. Now, it still did over 2000 damage, which is a decent combo. I built a lot of bar, and now I'm the one with all the screen to play with, not him. And then eventually, you're just going to get more comfortable with putting your opponent in the back. You're going to be like, hey, I can dash forward and then lead into a combo like this. And now, they just ate, 5,000 plus damage, and they're in the corner, and I have all the space to work with again. So I still can get the max damage and prioritize the corner depending on the situation. And that's just something that you're going to have to start putting into your game. Are you going to learn it overnight? Probably not. But again, we're all here to learn at our own pace. And then another thing you can implement is if you see a perfect parry go off and you're in the corner, a lot of the times, the best option is to, instead of going for a combo, you throw them backwards. They lose a lot of drive bar and they're back in the corner. And you still did 1000 damage, which is pretty good for a perfect parry punish. So in conclusion, just think about the corner as the most advantageous spot for you when you're on offense. So the longer you keep your opponent there, the more you make them feel uncomfortable there, the higher chances you're going to be able to get damage and win rounds. And the more you do that over a course of, multiple sets, you're going to see how fast you improve and how many more games you actually start winning. Now let's talk about the not so fun part when you're in the corner. So the very first tip is a very important one, especially if you're just a beginner here. Holding down back is your best friend in the corner at the beginning. It's better than options like neutral jumping or jumping forward because it's safer and the most ways that players will open you up if they don't have like a command throw is first they'll do an overhead. So as you can see, Blanca's overhead comes out in 20 frames, and some overheads are even slower than that. And the other way they're going to open you up is by doing a low, and Blanca's came out in 8 frames, and some lows are even faster than that. The reason the crouch block is so important here is if we do have to react to the high, we have 2 times as much time to react because it's twice as slow to come out. But there's another advantage to blocking low as well. The other reason is if you do get hit by an overhead, if it's a clean overhead, so it's not followed by like a drive rush, or they do it with like a setup with like a Blanca Chan or something like that, they're not going to be able to get anything after this. It's only +3. They're not going to be able to combo it. If it's counter hit or punish counter, that's a different story. But that's pretty much the gist of what's going to happen. But if they hit you with a low, they can drive rush and go into, you know, level 3 combos. They can go into crazy routes. So you want to minimize having to be hit by a drive cancelable normal as much as you can. Eat the overheads if you have to. They don't even do that much damage in this game. And it saves you from, you know, dealing with a crazy mix-up or a crazy damage combo. The other reason crouch is so important is that, as you can see, when you're standing and when you're crouching, the size of your hurt box actually changes a lot. So a lot of times, you know, your opponent might try to jump in on you, and if I'm standing, for example, I'm gonna have less time to react to something like that. But if I was crouching, I have a lot more time to react to it. You can even do like the shortcut DP motion from crouching. It makes your hitbox way smaller. This is called a low profile, and it just gives you an extra second to get out of the corner, and that extra second might win you a game or two. And then the final reason the crouching is so important is that it gives you access to good normals very fast. So a lot of characters have a 4-frame low, very good, or a 5-frame short, also very good. And if they're lucky, they'll have good buttons into drive rush as well. So if your opponent decides, you know what, I'm going to pressure more, I'm going to walk them down, you have an option to keep them out with something like that and then drive rush out if you have to. And that option is much easier to get to when you're already holding crouch, as opposed to, you know, quickly trying to press it like that. So crouching is a very good tool to launch a surprise attack and to let your opponent walk into the ranges that you want them to be into. The next tip is a very important one. Sometimes your opponent's going to throw out normals like this and then quickly throw out another normal. When you're in neutral, you know, you're able to adjust the spacing, move backwards, but remember, when you're in the corner, there's no more back. So what you have to do in this situation is get into the habit of taking an extra half second or a second pause before you throw out a normal, just so you know what your opponent's doing. So in this situation, you know, if I have Blanca just mash in this on wake up, if I mash my fierce kick, I'm going to get beat because Blanca is trying to set me up with a spacing trap because he's the one with all the space advantage. So if I actually just take a second to delay, I can catch the spacing trap like that. So in the corner, you have to be more patient. That half second, full second will buy you tons of time to actually react to something like this and then throw off a whiff punish, and then you're on your way. Tip number 3, another very important one is, a lot of times when your opponent's trying to do, you know, footsie spacing, they're going to be going back and forward like this a lot. If they're moving a bit further back and you know that the range is kind of safe, take one step forward. If they let you have that one step, it's big. Why is it big? Because one, you're not completely in the corner now, so if you do have to step back, you can actually play some, you know, footsies back with them. And sometimes they'll be in such a far distance where you can actually drive after them with some pressure, you know, do like a very active normal, a very, you know, strong normal like that. And they might even give you some space to forward dash as well. But the most important thing to remember here is you're not just glued to the corner just because they're looking at you. If you feel that they let their, you know, foot off the pedal a bit, take a step forward, take another step forward, and then now you have more space to walk back and forth with if you do have to get into a neutral battle. So one area you can see this a lot is when people try to get you into a fireball trap. What they're going to do is they're going to be chucking fireballs. If you walk back and block, all it's going to do is put you back in the corner. Now I'm still in the same spot. If I walk up and do a perfect parry, now I'm not in the back anymore. I still have more space to walk. So you're actually able to start creating more space for yourself by just taking a tiny step, doing something like a perfect parry, and walking forward. And I know it seems like it's not much, But these couple inches, you know, go a long way. And obviously I'm gonna have to make an inappropriate joke or an immature joke, but everyone will take a couple inches on their height, of course. Get your mind out of the gutter. Now the next tip is, you know, how to avoid getting hit by a drive impact in the corner, because let's be honest, that's our biggest fear, because not only is this, you know, gonna lead to a damaging combo, but it also takes a lot of our drive bar away. So the very first thing you need to know is it will help if you set up a macro button. So right now my L1 is set to drive impact, and this will give me more time to react because I'm going to be able to push one button. Sometimes if you try to, you know, press fierce punch and hard punch at the same time, I might, you know, push too many buttons at the same time. I'm not going to get it. But if it's a macro, I'm always going to get it. So I just got into the habit of using my pinky. I play with a stick of, you know, just being able to quickly hit the drive impact if I need it. But the reason I made this tip is, believe it or not, always countering with a drive impact is not the best solution. It's probably the best solution, I would say 80% of the time, but you have to know when you should do the other option. So if you're just focusing on, you know, going for the kill, or you have a lot of drive bar yourself, going for a drive impact punish is fine, because one, it gets you out of the corner and it does a ton of damage, and you know, that's always good to have in your books. But I'm going to show you why in some situations a perfect parry is better. So the very first reason is, one, you need enough health to actually get up a drive impact. So if you don't have enough health and I do a counter, guess who dies? Me. So you have to look at your health bar and see, hey, is the actual drive impact counter going to kill me, or will I still be able to, you know, get it off safely? And then for those that are curious, you know, these are just some examples of what you can do if you do get the perfect parry off. The other reason you need to know the difference between when to do the parry and the drive impact is all about not burning yourself out. So as we know, you know, a drive impact does 1 bar. So if I'm low on drive bar, as you see in the top left, even if I do get this off, I'm going to be burnt out. And you have to ask yourself, you have to do the calculation in your head. Was that the right time to get burnt out? How is the situation going to play out for the rest of the match? Maybe it wasn't optimal to be burnt out because my opponent still has all his resources and I'm in big trouble. But on the flip side, if I was to do a parry, even if I don't get the full parry off, look how much bar I just built back. That's 2 full bars of drive parry once you pass half a bar over here. And I didn't even get the perfect parry off. If you get the perfect parry off, you still get, you know, a lot of drive bar back, and you get a punish after it as well. So not only did I avoid getting burnt out, but I built a lot of resources back, and those are the resources that I need to, you know, drive rush out, have defensive options like DPs and whatnot. So parrying helps you not only conserve your bar, but also make sure that, you know, you're not going to put yourself in a burnt out state. And then tip 5, it's all about risk, and sometimes you have to take a risk to get out of the corner. So let's go through some of those risks that you can take. Alright, so let's talk about the most popular and obvious version to jump out. It's just doing a simple jump. And the big risk about this is your opponent's going to be looking out for it. So you have to use a calculated jump. That's why I recommend, if you're going to jump, be close up to your opponent when you do the jump, because a lot of people are going to have a harder time to react to that because they're waiting for you to jump. So if they're at this distance and you jump, you know, you're eating a big combo potentially, or you're just getting an anti-air back into the corner. So pick your jump carefully, and then you're also able to see how your opponent is able to punish jump-ins. And what I mean about knowing what your opponent's capable of as well, you know, they might practice things like cross-cut DPs and still be able to hit you on the way out. But at least you can tell yourself that, hey, I'm out of the corner with that option. But if they're good, they can still combo level 3 into it as well. So you might have to be even more calculated with your jump out. Then the next very important tip is just knowing your reversals. So the main ways people are going to get out of corner, you know, they're either going to mash out an invincible reversal like that, or they're going to do a level 1 super. Now the important thing here is to know that an OD reversal is not always better than a level 1 super. And I'm going to give you examples of why that's the case. So we're going to look at 2 different sets of bars here. If you look at Ryu's bar in the top right corner, he has 2 bars of drive gauge, and I have 1 super bar at my disposal. So I know if he does an OD Shoryuken, He's gonna go right into the sky if I, set the recording to do an OD Shoryuken. He's gonna waste 2 bars, and then whatever combo I hit him with next, he's gonna go into Burnout. Even if I was to hit him without hitting him with a super, because it's punish counter, he'll go into Burnout. And now you're in a lot of trouble because that drive bar was giving you a defensive option, and you need as many defensive options in the corner that you have. But if he was to do a wake up level 1, even if I block it or I parry it completely, he didn't lose any drive bar from that interaction. Now when I go into an actual combo, he'll actually take some damage from that, but because I don't have a level 3, there is no combo that I'll be able to hit him with that's going to send him into Burnout, and I'm going to show you right now. As you can see, just a basic combo with a level 1. He's not in Burnt Out, and Ryu still has some defensive resources at his disposal. And that's just the key takeaway I want people to have, is don't worry about losing your super bar if it's a defensive option, as long as you keep other defensive options with your drive bar. Because even if your opponent blocks either way, you're going to be eating big damage regardless. So it doesn't matter if they actually block the super 1 or the OD uppercut. You're going to take damage. But in some cases, do the level 1 so you still keep your drive bar, because we need those defensive options. And because you kept yourself with more resources, if you're a character without, like an OD uppercut, or you just want to change it up, you still have access to something like a drive reversal, which sends your opponent far. And after a drive reversal, you can do a quick dash up, and you gave yourself some more breathing room. But what I will say is, do not get predictable with your drive reversals, because a lot of characters, Terry for example, can still get a powerful medium punch counter combo like that. And if Terry hits you with the medium punch, that's going straight into the power charge, and you're going to be dealing a lot of damage. So don't throw out drive reversals all the time, but they're still another defensive option that are completely invincible, and they help every single character in this game.